Welcome to the AI+HI project. I'm Nichol Bradford, SHRM's executive in residence for AI+HI. Thanks for joining us. Each week, we sit down with visionaries from the worlds of business, tech, and HR to provide you with deep insights, actionable strategies, and practical advice for harnessing the transformative potential of artificial intelligence combined with human ingenuity. This week, we're exploring AI's role in transforming global employment with Nicole Sahin, founder, CEO, and chair at GP. Nicole is a pioneering force in global HR, tax, legal, and compliance, and has been twice recognized as one of Goldman Sachs' 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs. Nicole, welcome to the AI+HI project.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
I've been looking forward to talking to you for quite some time. So let's start with your journey in global employment solutions. What inspired you to explore the intersection of international workforce management and AI?
Well, thank you so much for asking. I've been running a company for about a dozen years, and when I started the company, it was at the forefront of the global employment industry. So at that time, um, we built a global employment platform, it's also known as Global Employer of Record platform, which the idea is that anyone can hire anyone anywhere quickly and easily because we've set up legal infrastructure spanning the globe. So anywhere a company wants to hire, they can leverage our global legal infrastructure to hire employees around the globe so that they don't have to set up their own. And the way that business model worked, the employer of record, globalization partners employer of record, is they use our software, build an employment contract, and hire an employee. Like, let's say they want to hire an employee in Brazil. They create the employment contract under the terms that they want to issue to the employee. But when the employment offer and employment contract goes out, it goes from our Brazilian company on the ground in country to that local employee. That way, the company, they pay our US company, we pay the employee through our Brazilian company. It keeps the customer out of the legal and tax jurisdiction of actually doing business in Brazil in this case, and gives the employee all the employment protections that he or she is entitled to in that country, and like that any company has to follow if they're doing business in Brazil. So we do that in every country. We started building that company 12 years ago. At the time, the industry didn't exist, and we built that whole company. Then when AI came out, I actually remember I was at Davos shortly after ChatGPT was launched. We had been already working to organize our data and automate everything using AI. As you guys know, data is super important. But we had been organizing things and getting things ready to be able to use AI and leverage AI. And the opportunity to build to leverage all of the intellect and all of the work that our global legal and HR team has leveraged around the globe in managing tens of thousands of employees in 180 countries. It was like right there. It was like finally the tool to actually materialize the vision. I'd always had the vision of automate everything related to global HR and put everything our customers need to hire the best talent around the globe and enable equal access to opportunity for everyone at their fingertips. The biggest obstacle has always been like navigating the legal and HR complexity of doing business in another country. It's crazy because if you think about laws and specifically employment protections, our ancestors starting like 100 some more than 150 years ago started fighting for employment protections on a country by country basis, on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis to protect workers. And so the global law that protects employees is great. It's a lot. It's very complicated. It changes constantly. And the only way to actually make that vision come to life is with tools like AI, because otherwise the vision is too vast. But finally, it's like we have the tools at our fingertips to make it truly easy for anyone, anywhere to be able to hire anyone, anywhere.
Well, first of all, one of the things that I love about what you've done, because I've worked overseas too, and I've worked in global operations my whole career, and just really the complexity. I worked in China, and so just the complexity of hiring people around the world. What you've done has really opened things up for opportunity for people everywhere. And now what I'm hearing from how you've been thinking about AI is that this is sort of the next generation. And so I'd love to hear about your new product and also how you're thinking about it as it relates to human and AI collaboration in HR?
Absolutely. It's an exciting topic. So the human interaction with the AI, I think, is really it's exciting to be at the forefront of that jurisdiction and really leverage it to help people be more human in the way that they and more professional in the way they interact with employees all over the globe. So GPGIA takes the knowledge of our global legal and HR operations professionals all over the globe who've spent the last 12 years managing tens of thousands of employees through onboarding, offboarding, management, complexity, cross-cultural communication issues, everything that's been recorded through our customer service calls, through our documents and templates and everything else. It records takes all of that information and it puts it at the fingertips of our customers. So when a client uses GPGIA, like let's say they want to hire somebody in Brazil, they say, "Hey, I need to issue an offer letter to this person in Brazil. What do I need to do?" It'll give them a step-by-step process, things to look out for, and it'll say, "Do you want me to draft that employment contract for you?" And the customer say, "Yes." Makes an offer letter, an engagement letter, or sorry, employment contract offer. Just so you know, you need to have it translated into Portuguese. Would you like me to do that? Sure. Click this button. And it's all of it's been reviewed and provided, like all of the information in our data, it's all our own data. It's not open source data. It's perfect. It's exactly what a customer needs to do business. And we're launching it with 50 states and 50 countries at the outset. We'll keep going to span the entire globe in a short period of time.
And one of the things that you mentioned I want to go back to is you talked about how this type of tool allows people to really be more human at work because they get to focus on that part of their hiring. Could you speak to the human part of it and how this allows people to be more human?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that does go to the AI human interaction that you're focused on, Nicole, which is okay. So I think that when people know what they're dealing with and they have all the nuance and the facts of like the cultural norms of where's their employee coming from? Like, why do they think this is normal on the ground in country? What would they normally be legally entitled to? What does the employee expect? Some of the nuance in language that we use in different countries is hard to understand. But what I've found over and over again, and what most HR people would agree with, is that if you can just have a conversation with someone where you're like open-minded and truly receptive to where that person's coming from, then you can get to the core of an issue and resolve an issue. Also, I think, there's a lot of things that people are worried about tripping over. So, like if I were to have a call with an employee in Ireland and it was a sensitive HR related call, I'd be very careful about making sure I researched what I do and don't need to say on that call before I took that call as an HR professional, right? Like if I were talking about employee performance or wanted to have a conversation of any sensitivity, putting that information at somebody's fingertips before they have that call and enabling them to go into that call fully prepared enables them to have that, heart to heart conversation in a way that the employee can improve his or her performance if that's the issue at hand, or be receptive to the conversation without the person who's having the conversation or managing the conversation be really scared of tripping over some legal issue.
One of the things that I'm really interested in products like these is the number of steps that AI is able to help with out of the entire number of steps. So, if you could, when someone is setting up a contract or hiring someone in Brazil, how many approximately, like how many steps were there? And then how many of those steps does Gia help with?
I mean, I think Gia could help all the way through with an onboarding for sure, 100%. So I'd say there's the initial conversation, like what will this employee expect for compensation? Like what are the market norm benefits in country, that type of thing. So it's like really the negotiation stage of with the employee. Gia can completely help with that. Gia can help draft an employment contract, can handle all of that. Um, there's a few things that Gia could not do or could do depending on the situation. So I would say like if a customer, like in order to actually employ somebody in Brazil, you would need to have a company set up in Brazil. So Gia would ask, do you want to set this employee up through your company? Or if you don't have a company already established in Brazil, we can offer one of ours. You can employ this person through GP, which is a separate product. It's our employer of record platform. If the customer has their own entity in Brazil, we can do things like localize their employment contract to work in Brazil. So all of that is instantly available. It's just literally a push of a button. The things, if we want to take a more nuanced or like complicated situation, we could talk about terminating an employee. And so we could say, like, let's say you need to terminate an employee in Brazil. Gia could guide an HR practitioner in another country through all the steps that are required to go through in a termination process. But it's probably going to, like, there are situations where you might need a lawyer, of course. And it would always say, like, we would recommend checking in with a lawyer at this point. Like, this you're getting into sticky territory. You need to contact a lawyer in Brazil. And of course, we'll be set up to refer customers in that case. But like basic terminations and things like that, Gia could handle.
So, Nicole, looking ahead, how do you see global workforce management transforming as AI becomes more integrated into HR processes?
That's a great question, Nicole. I think it's ultimately just going to become so much easier because automating some of the workflows and some of the documentation and the legal issues, and that removes the complexity from the situation. And it just makes people be able to focus on what they ultimately want when they're hiring people in other places, which is to be able to get the best work out of that person, to be able to communicate with that person clearly. I think AI and AI tools like GPGA can help people avoid some of the cross-cultural communications, or certainly minimize them or get clarity quickly. And just being able to minimize all the legal and HR issues and just get stuff done like you do when you work with somebody who, comes from the same culture, background, legal infrastructure as you do, just makes life easy. So it's going to get really easy really quickly. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. It lets people focus on the human part that really matters, and that increases the speed of trust so that they can get the work done more quickly.
Totally.
I'd love to talk about guiding principles and how you think about what should be integrated with AI and also what shouldn't. Earlier, you mentioned that people can decide what they choose to use it with or not. And so, what are some of the principles and when you think about when it should be used and also when it shouldn't?
Well, I'll say, what we've done in building our AI product is to just really keep the customer and data privacy top of mind. But for example, like we're using all of our own data. We're using our own RAG. This is all of our own information and intel basically that we've collated over a dozen years. And ultimately, AI is only as good as the information and data on which it's built. So we've been, just ruthlessly careful and making sure that Gia doesn't hallucinate, and that we're being very careful with our product before we launch it. Um, and also that our customers' data doesn't go back out. It's not set. We don't keep our customers' data. We don't keep employee data. We're just very careful in all of those ways. So in terms of when it should and should not be used, I mean, at the end of the day, um, Gia's not going to go to court for you, right? It's not a lawyer. It's not going to go to a labor tribunal. There's things that, Gia hasn't passed the bar exam in 180 countries yet, And at the end of the day, I think you always need to use human judgment and the compassion that goes with it, right? Like we can build a lot into guidance, but at the end of the day, we always have to do what we know is right by people. And that cannot be replaced. The human element, the care can't be replaced. AI can prepare somebody to have difficult conversations and take care of documentation, but it's never going to replace human interaction.
I love that point. I one of the things about strategy, for example, is it's as much what people choose not to do as what they choose to do. And I think AI is very much the same in that there are areas where one could use AI to do something. Like it's clear one could use AI to terminate someone, but that is the wrong thing to do.
I totally
Uh,
agree.
it's the wrong thing to do. So So I love to get behind people's guiding principles when they're developing cutting edge products. I'd love to see and hear some examples where you've seen AI enhance rather than replace humans' capabilities in a global employment solution, where you've seen someone be able to do something that they perhaps weren't able to do before, or it was really, really hard. And if you could give us a real tangible example.
Sure. I mean, I would say an easy example, but it's a mind-blowing example is like if you were a big company that have, technically you're supposed to have employment handbooks on the ground, in each country and localized for each country if you have a certain number of employees in all of those locations. With GPGEO, we can take a US employment handbook and localize it into 50 countries literally, in a couple minutes, because I'm even software takes a few minutes to do that, put out that much documentation. Um, but if you think about it, like that would have taken an entire law firm and probably one of the best law firms in the world, like a couple months to actually turn that around, all the back and forth, going back and forth. And like, I mean, probably $7,000 or $8,000 per country. So like, and so for an HR professional who's running an enterprise level organization to just have all of that done and at her fingertips and like able to complete that level of workload is extraordinary. And that's the type of thing nobody wants to spend, so much time drafting all these documentations. Like a lawyer, even good lawyers also don't want to spend all their time drafting template documents. They just don't want to. They want to spend their time negotiating with employees and doing really critical and thoughtful work and like negotiating solutions when it matters. So it's that type of thing that I think AI, already offers in some test cases. We haven't launched GPGA yet, but that's the type of thing that we're seeing. We're seeing our customers use it for in the beta version.
So, Nicole, how do you approach building a collaborative culture that embraces both human ingenuity and AI capabilities across different geographies? Because you touch so many different countries, you are able to see how different companies and different cultures are willing to adopt AI. And then also you're able to see like what does it take? What does collaboration actually look like? And so how does one build a collaborative culture in an AI HI context?
Totally, Nicole. That's a really good question. Thank you so much. I think the way to build a collaborative culture spanning the globe with related to AI, first it starts with trust, like people knowing how the product is built. And it also seems to take time. Like people want to know how can they trust the information that they're getting from an AI basis. So we try to be really clear with our beta customers and also our internal team that's leveraging Gia now, um, where the information comes from. We ask for feedback. Everybody's screening it, and we're very careful. We also explain, where the data came from, how we know that Gia is not hallucinating, and how we're on guard and protecting everybody against that. And we're also encouraging people to use their best judgment. But at the end of the day, right now, I think there is a bit of what we've seen. There is a bit of reluctance for people to start kind of using the tools, but as soon as they start doing it, it makes their job so much more effective and so much more efficient that it's almost like we probably didn't trust, you know, I think, we probably didn't, I can imagine our parents 15 years ago were like, I don't need an iPhone, and now they're just couldn't live without it. It's like it's that type of thing. It's going to become so baked into what we do on an everyday basis that none of us are going to be doing anything without AI in the not too distant future. So it's just going to become part of us and the way we do work. I have to say internally too, we're also mandating that our team everybody has to use Gia, because if they don't, at the end of the day, they're 20 times less efficient than the other members of our team. It's either, we're saying like, you know, Gia doesn't replace jobs. We need the same number of people that we did before, um, but people who don't use AI in their jobs are going to be left behind because they're going to be much less efficient than everybody else.
One of the things we've seen in some of our research has been that there's the rough breakdown in many companies, or you have 25% that are the absolute early adopters. They're like, give it to me yesterday. And then you have 25% who are very resistant to it. And then there's 25% that are willing to use it, but they don't want to train it because they don't want to be, if it's wrong, they don't want it to have been their fault. And then the other 25%, they'll do it right after the early adopters if the early adopters are positioned as champions around the organization. And so it's interesting to see that that's kind of consistent across companies. What were some of the surprising lessons that you've learned or seen as you were getting your own organization to be willing to embrace and adopt AI?
Yeah, thank you. It is interesting about that. I mean, what we found was our sales team and our service team started using AI right away, not across the board, but they started adopting the use of our internal product. And I think it's because it's just so helpful for them to have all of the information at their fingertips. But what we also found is that I would say people at some more traditional industries or like finance or legal, a little bit slower to use the product because they just, I think people, certain industries have a more traditional mindset. They have their ways of doing things that they've always done and they just like it. And in the end, we had to ultimately just mandate everybody needs to use the product because we need everybody's feedback and we want everybody using it to be most effective and efficient.
Do you think I just had this thought while you were answering that question. For sales and customer service, their metrics are very, very clear on a monthly and quarterly basis. Like it's super clear whether or not they are hitting their marks in a very short order. Do you think that that might be one of the reasons why those departments were so eager? Because as soon as they saw that it could help them with their objectives.
Well, I do now, Nicole, and that brings some really good management ideas to mind that we might need to go execute. But I couldn't agree more. It's like customer success and salespeople, like they have metrics to hit that they have to hit. So perhaps everybody in an organization, if a CEO is saying like, you have to be using AI to do your job, and if you're not going to be as good of an employee, then maybe that should be clear in the metrics that we manage throughout our organizations.
Yeah, and that sort of like leads to what the future of organizations look like too, because those particular departments, their turn cycle on review against metrics is really, really tight. Like it on some of them, it might be on some sales organizations, it might be weekly, but it's definitely monthly. And so it's very clear if they're ahead of their goals or not. And other functions have a bit longer. They might be on quarterly or half year or even an annual review. And so that's interesting. Okay, so how do you measure success when you're combining AI with traditional HR practices across different jurisdictions? Like how will you know that the product has been successful?
The way we are managing our product is to make sure we want 100% of the users who are liking it to say they love it. Like until they say they love it, we don't open it up to the next level in our product category, like the testers group. So we're just adding significant tranches of product users each time we hit a metric where it's like everybody's using the product says they absolutely love it and they can't live without it. Okay, well we have a huge wait list right now. I have to say we announced this at Web Summit in November, and like it just blew up the wait list. So everybody wants access to GPGIA because HR people know that have the idea of being able to manage 50 countries and 50 states quickly and easily is such a radical game changer that people just want access to the product. But the way we're taking our approach is basically just keep widening the aperture. But every time we widen the aperture, wait until we're requiring feedback. Everybody says they totally love it. When they say they love it, we let in the next tranche of people on the wait list.
That raises something that we've been seeing consistently in cases, because one of the things we're doing at SHRM is we are studying success and also failure, and what are the determinants of that. And one part of it is for people to really understand that any implementation of AI is not one and done. It's iteration, iteration, iteration. And that's a core part of success. So I really appreciate that that's how you're doing it. What emerging trends are you seeing in how organizations are combining human expertise with AI for workforce management? Like what are the trends that are coming that meet with this AI moment?
Yes. It's really interesting. We've just been surprised, like how much our customers want to use Gia once they get started using it. It's almost like they get addicted and they're like, wow, this is so incredible because they trust the product. But I guess some of the use cases we've seen, one of our customers wanted to draft a letter to the entire company. Look, I need to terminate my CFO. How do I announce this to the company? That is so like sensitive. Like it's such a poignant, like, whoo, the CFO just quit. That's going to impact the whole company. How do I articulate that to the entire company in a way that like sounds like it's okay and like puts people's minds at ease? There couldn't be anything more necessary from a human reassurance perspective, but that this particular test user went to Gia to have her draft a letter. And honestly, it looked great. Like our team was like, that was an unexpected use case. And we learned a lot from this. And that's a very I would also think that this HR practitioner who asked Gia to draft that was probably really nervous about it and just needed a starting point. And so yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how people use it, and that their trust is building pretty quickly to use things far beyond those which we ever imagined.
And then just global trends in workforce management for, ongoing globalization, for just the shifts that are happening in organizations. What are some of the trends that you've just seen in terms of how people are hiring globally and how that matches up with this AI moment?
Well, I think there's multiple trends that are happening in our economy and society right now. And first is the everyone everywhere moment that, companies have realized that they're no longer its headquarters, and if for any non-local business, it's like companies need to hire talent wherever it is. Nobody wants to go to the office every day. Very few people have to. And like the best talent in the world wants to live where they live. And like you have to be global in order to get the best people on board or even to find enough of the talent. So I think first there's the necessity. Second is another trend is like the talent is everywhere and it's not here. Besides people not wanting to live in cities or not wanting to live in the Silicon Valley, New York, and London only, there's also like some of the best talent, AI talent in the world is in India and China. And that's just where they live. And we always are going to have to follow the laws in whatever country people live. Um, Another interesting trend is that as companies need to hire the best talent in the world, no matter where that talent is, companies are no longer like employees are no longer saying, I'll accept whatever my local market norm salary is. We have seen a radical change in the way people are compensated around the globe when it's the best talent. It's not for everybody. It's not the grocery store, diner workers in Mexico are making the same amount as diner workers in the Silicon Valley, not by a long shot. But if you have a really great engineer in India is going to make as much as a really great engineer in Ireland. And that's it. Like there's a global salary that the best talent in the world commands, and they're going to get it no matter what, no matter where they live, I should say. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing that I find most fascinating at this pivotal point in human history where people are more empowered than ever.
Great. Okay, so to close things up, we love to end with practical advice. And so, what's great about what you've done is one, you have an organization that you and your team have led into the age of AI, including, mandating, okay, everybody, we're not waiting for you anymore. You have to use it. And then in addition, you have made an AI product too. So in both of these cases, you are an exemplar to look at as an organization because there's people everywhere who are running their businesses or working inside of their businesses. So, what practical steps would you recommend for a leader if they're just getting started into integrating AI into their organization? Like, what should they do?
I mean, that's a good question. And it probably depends organization by organization. But I think my advice to leaders is always just take a good look at who's leading your company and making sure that you have the best talent you can find. And if not, just making whatever changes you need to in order to execute on those changes. Because not every executive is going to be at the forefront of their game. And it could be that the best person on your team for the last 3 years has been incredible in many ways, but they're not going to take you forward in the AI revolution because they want to do things the way they've always been. Unfortunately, if that's the situation, like you just have to go hire the talent that's going to be willing to take you forward. So I think about like a CIO really looking across the organization and saying like, how are we going to be in the game and make sure there's products launching constantly? I mean, from a marketing stack perspective, looking at the products that are being launched, really, AI products, it's incredible. You can get like 50 times out of your marketing team than you could a year ago. Okay, that might be at least like 5 times more. You can get a lot of content pushed out by the same amount of people that you could have, even a year ago. So I think making sure that you're using AI and thinking strategically is the only possible way to stay at the forefront.
Well, thank you so much. And that's it for this week's episode. A big thank you to you, Nicole Sahin, for sharing your expertise and insight with us. And before we wrap up, everyone, I encourage you to follow the AI+HI project wherever you enjoy your podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to comment, leave a review. It really helps. And finally, you can find all of our episodes on our website at shrm.org/AI+HI. Thanks for joining the conversation, and we'll catch you next time.